Whew. All right, everybody, we are back. Um, let's see. Did I push all the buttons? I think all the buttons are pushed. So we're gonna rock it. So, what's up, Anonymous? We're back in business. We are here. It is time. I took a nice long hiatus. Let me get this in the right position. Look at that, just that little hint of warmth. Look at that, gorgeous. Okay. What are we doing? I wanted to check my lighting because we haven't been here for a while. We've been doing it's been busy. It's been real busy. I'll talk about that in just a second here. Let me just double check that this is all doing what I want it to do. Let's see this. Yeah, that one's doing what I want. That one's on. Turn those ones on. All right, we're in business here. We're doing great. I think I probably want to pull this down just a little bit, though. That's too much. You come up a little bit. How's that looking? Is that looking good? I think we're okay there. I think this is going to be good enough for today. So what's up, y'all? What's up, Lacondo? What's up, Bridge? What's up, Rondiel? All right. So what's new? What's everybody been up to? Here's what's new for me. I've been for the last month, I kind of took the month of August off, and off is maybe a misleading term, but I was starting to feel the beginnings of burnout in the beginning of August because I was just not really giving myself any space. I have, I this year I started going to the gym 4 days a week, and I was streaming 2 days a week, and we have some other, like my wife and I have some other obligations that are just sort of standing, and it led to me feeling like there was no unscheduled time, no unstructured time. And so I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but the general idea is like I feel I am pretty good at fitting things into the cracks. Like if we've got a busy day, I will figure out a way to put, a little bit of work in between running some errands, in between, spending some time with my family, whatever it is. But the trouble is that it sort of creates this you're never just there. You're always sort of prepping for the next thing. You've got your next appointment, you've got your next call, you've got your next errand you need to run. There's always something sort of looming over you, right? And that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that for sustained periods of time, it can get really challenging to just always be waiting for the next thing on your calendar to hit and to not spend any time where there's no structure. And I think this is a thing that's really challenging for everybody as an adult is that there's always something. Like you got to pay bills, you got to run errands, you got to take the trash out, there's always something. Um so I have been trying to build Code TV for the last couple of years. I've been pushing pretty hard. I haven't had a lot of, vacations. And I noticed that over the last few months, as I was getting real busy, which is a very good problem to have. Like a lot of people started reaching out. Q3 was far and away the busiest I've ever been at Code TV. So, thank you to everyone who's been watching and supporting. Thank you to the companies that are reaching out to work together. Like I could not be happier about where I am in my life with Code TV and kind of how things are going and feeling for me. So that's why it felt weird. This was at the wrong height. But so I think the part that got hard though is because I was so busy, I wasn't even taking weekends anymore because my Mondays are basically wall to wall sales calls. Tuesdays, I go to the gym at 7. I'm streaming by 9. I'll talk about why I adjusted that time in a second. And then I stream until noon, and then afternoon I run to lunch, and then I usually have some afternoon stuff that I'm doing, like meeting with production crew, getting prep for stuff. Like today, when I get off, I have a meeting immediately after the stream. I've got another meeting immediately after that one. Then I have like a 15-minute break, and then I have to do a content review for something we're filming later this week, and then I have 2.5 hours to prep, like go shopping, get all the stuff, and then I have a web dev challenge tomorrow that we're filming. So I have to go cook a dinner at my house, right? So basically, like that's how a lot of my days are, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, it's great to be busy. It is a good problem. But because my weekdays are like that, my weekends, I'm trying to do some code work on the Code TV side. I'm trying to catch up on emails. I'm trying to, do some editing on a project that we didn't budget properly for a real editor. Any of those little things that sort of fills the empty space. And I think I'd been doing that for 6 months. So in the beginning of August, I started to realize like I was burning out, not like burned out, but I could feel the sizzle starting. And for me, where that signal is I love this job and I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. And I found myself not wanting to do it. Like I would wake up on a production day and I would like not want to get out of bed. And that's a weird, like, I knew that was a sign that something was wrong. And so I in the past, I would say, I just got to push through, just one more week and then everything will be fine. And instead, what I did was I sat down and I thought about it and I was like, okay, why am I dreading doing this thing that I've worked so hard to make into my job? And I just realized I've had no unstructured time. I've had no days off. I've had no anything that was just for me. It's always been something. It's catch up. It's clean up. It's getting ahead. It's never just existing. Um, so I made a choice. I made a choice that in August I was going to limit the number of time based things that I was going to commit to. So I canceled all my streams. I didn't do any Learn with Jasons. I didn't do any of these Tuesday streams, and I was just trying to unstructure my weeks a little bit. Give me a little more time to, that 3 hours on Tuesday becomes more of a working session. So now I'm catching up on emails. I'm actually doing the editing and video feedback and stuff there instead of on nights and weekends. And my Thursdays, instead of being from 7 in the morning until noon, completely locked up every week because I've got the gym and then Learn with Jason, I was able to make those into work sessions or schedule a couple meetings there or whatever it was, which meant that I actually got to Fridays and felt like I had a bit of a grip on what was going on. Um, it made a huge difference. Like I have my energy back, and I took some weekends off. I actually a couple weekends ago, I just went to the woods. My friends Joel and Christina and their family invited me and Marissa out to like they had a group campsite on a lake somewhere in Oregon, and it was I'd never done it like this. It was like there was a campsite in an RV park, but then down this kind of side road, it was called the group site, and it was just a big clearing. And they had wheeled some porta potties down there, so you didn't have to like walk a long way to get to the bathroom or anything. But there was room for 3 tents. We had rented a converted Sprinter van that was like a camper van, and Joel and Christina have an RV, and then there was a big central fire pit. So we kind of just like parked around the edges. There was a dock right into the lake. It was like having a private space, but there's no cell reception. We didn't. Joel's got the Starlink on his RV, but he didn't hook it up. So we just sat around, cooked, talked, read books. Marissa went and paddleboarded with Christina and the kids, and it was great. They had a great time. I like didn't think about work. I didn't do anything. Obviously, like you come back into reception and the cell phone starts kind of vibrating off the table, and that was a little bit nerve wracking. But nothing went wrong. Nothing like it was just I've got to catch up on this stuff that I haven't looked at for the last 4 days. But like I knew that was going to happen. But nothing broke. Nothing fell apart. No, and it was all fine. And it was a good reminder to me that the reason I like failed in my first agency was because I stopped having breaks. And giving myself this break over August was a really good reminder that that's a critical part of being able to do this well, because you can't do good work if you wake up dreading the work, right? So that's sort of how that all feels. But let's see, yeah. Just looking back through. August should be vacation time. I actually I'm starting to agree, and I'm strategizing about how to make some of this stuff work. What's up, Soundcat? How you doing? Valderrama, hello. Hello from Panama. Heck yeah. Oh, you watch my videos with automatic translation in Spanish? Very cool. Yes, so the live ones, I can't imagine YouTube can pull that off cost effectively. So there's I guess the replay will be available, which might have the automatic translation. We'll see. Fighting dark mode in Safari, yeah, always a problem. What's up, Mai? How you doing? Waiting for episodes of Elite Heat and Web Dev Challenge. We got Web Dev Challenge coming next week. We're gonna drop a new episode. Really excited about that. Elite Heat, I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen with Elite Heat. We did season 1. I really enjoyed making it, but we'll see. We'll see if we end up making more. It depends on whether or not we find the right sponsor. Yeah, the breather was huge. Hire someone to take care of some of those things. That is very much in my plan. I've written up the job description. I'm currently waiting. So I want to hire somebody. I need to make sure, like, I do not want to hire somebody until I'm 100% sure that I'm not going to have to lay them off when things get hard. So that means having a good cushion in the bank. And so I'm working on that cushion, but I also, in good problems, have decided that I think it's time for me to buy a building because I'm paying a lot in rent every month for the studio. We have completely outgrown the studio space that we're in. And I started looking at larger spaces, and the rent was so high to get enough room that it matched what a mortgage on a building would be. So I was like, well, that's never going to happen. I can't do that. That wouldn't work. And then I was talking to a leasing agent, and the leasing agent was like, have you ever looked into an SBA loan, which is in the US, that's the Small Business Association, I think. And I talked to the SBA, and they were like, yeah, actually this would work. And you qualify for all the things that you would need. And so it turns out if you get an SBA loan, the penalty is you pay an extra % in interest, but the benefit is you can finance up to 100% of the building. So you basically walk out of your lease and into a mortgage. And the only thing that changes is now you're paying a mortgage. You don't have to put a down payment down. Because there's a lot of incentives. And I mean, the US has so many problems, but they are really, really incentivized for businesses. So anyways, that's a new thing is now that I'm doing is I'm trying to buy a building. So that adds some uncertainty, which prevents me from feeling stable enough to hire, because if I get the building and there's instability during the transition time, I don't want to have to like furlough somebody for a couple months while I like do renovations on a building and don't have any projects, that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of moving parts and a lot of trying to make sure that if I'm going to commit to somebody like that, I want to be able to really commit and take care of them. Off topic. How do I manage my beard? So I manage my beard. One, I go to a barber every 2 to 3 weeks. That's probably the most important thing. And then I got I use a like a face wash in the shower that is to strip oils. And that helps me get because if you have a beard and you don't like really scrub down to the bottom, you get effectively dandruff, kind of like a similar thing to dandruff. So you get dry skin, your beard gets itchy. It's really annoying. So then you want to like clean all that out, and you want to kind of strip the extra oils and junk off your skin. So I use that face wash. And then when I get out of the shower, you have to put oils back in, or else you'll get dry skin, which also causes like flaking and stuff. So I use this it's kind of like an oil. It's like essential oils and a little bit of scent, and that I like melt that with the heat of my fingers. It's kind of a waxy tendency, so I kind of like melt it in and work that into the skin. And then I use a brush to like make sure it gets evenly distributed. Beard tips with Jason. So, I'm like not much of a camper. I'll be honest. It's not a thing that I get excited about or particularly enjoy. But I really like spending time with people. I think another way that I've done it that I personally preferred more is we rented we found a place on the Oregon coast that had like 8 bedrooms in it, and we all went in together. We rented it, so everybody had their own bedroom, but it was a communal kitchen, and it was like a 10-minute walk from the beach. But it was a house. Like, you've got showers, you've got all the amenities of being indoors, which, to me, that's kind of nice. I like being able to do that. And we were able to like play board games and things that are a little harder to do when you're camping. And all the things that people like about camping, like, a fire and making s'mores and stuff, you can still do when you're in a house like that, because there was the beach right there, and you can go start a fire. They've got fire pits on the coast in Oregon, so you can like go down to the coast and start a fire and do some s'mores, and you can go swimming if you want. It's freezing, but you can make that choice if you want to. But I personally, that's what I prefer, is like find a communal space that you can rent together with friends and not worry about like tents and porta potties and stuff like that. Um, yeah, Jack, I mean, you and I talked about this in person. It's like so important to remember that like all the forward motion doesn't matter if you're not taking time to actually enjoy what you're creating for yourself. Like, you work for a living, and you got to remember to live. um, Start an agency, start one for Shopify dev. Yeah, there's a lot of value in Shopify stuff right now. A lot of business there for sure. What's up, Akash? How you doing? Yeah, scary good problems for sure. What's up, Rick? How you doing? Move to India. That's true. Like, I have thought about. There was a while where I was thinking about, like, I lived in Thailand for a while. I lived in Vietnam for a little bit. I lived in Croatia, Slovenia. And I was like, I actually think I could live in any of those places. I've been to India exactly one time. I went to Goa, but I was there for a conference, and the conference wanted us to stay inside the hotel grounds for like the entire time we were there. So I feel like that doesn't count. I don't feel like I've been to India. I feel like I've been to a hotel in India, and I really want to go back and like spend real time there. Some tips on handling 100K users monthly, not concurrently. I mean, the thing that's hard about any type of scale is that a lot of times it's not like concurrency is what matters, and like spikes and being able to handle the spike pressure. So in most cases, if you're set up on something like, AWS Lambda or whatever, it'll kind of auto scale to handle those spikes, unless you're dealing with something wild. But it depends so much on what you're doing, because if you've got a lot of long running processes, if you've got if everybody is uploading megabytes or gigabytes of data, then that's very different than if you are, a site where people log in to look at something. So it's such a nuanced thing to talk about that it's pretty hard to talk about without like getting into the very specific details. Cabins rule. I do like cabins a lot. Mosquitoes and bug spray, also not a thing that I'm particularly fond of. Fortunately, in Oregon, at least this year, I haven't seen a lot of mosquitoes. We were out on that lake for 3 days, and I think like 2 people got mosquito bites. I didn't see any. I had like one bump that looked like a bug bite, and I was like, maybe that was a mosquito. But very fortunate on that trip that we didn't run into that. Okay, so what are we talking about today? You know what else really helped me? I realized that I'd been making this mistake. So I love a notebook, right? Like, I'm a notebook person. I was feeling, so part of like through August, I was feeling a lot of stress. I was feeling very kind of overwhelmed. I was feeling like I wasn't taking any breaks. And then I looked in my notebook, and so the way that I do my to-do list is, I'm not going to show these for very long because I think there might be some stuff that I can't show, but like I write down everything that I have to do, and I like date them at the top. So like, this is my to-do list from this day, and like there's these. But check this out. I was looking, and I had like a playlist or checklist from February 13th, February 26th, March 10th, and then I have this big jump to May 15th. Like, I didn't write a list for like 2 months. And then I wrote one on July 3rd. and then I wrote one on August 10th. So like I had stopped doing this ritual that was so important to me, where I would kind of sit down and untangle my life, and my list on July 3rd is monstrous. Like there's all this stuff going on it. And then this one's even worse. Like this one, this whole page, this is 3 columns and I write small. There's probably 50 things on this list. And that's August 10th. And then I didn't write another one until August 27th. I was like, what am I doing? This is such an important thing for me to do to make me feel collected, right? And so I also decided like that was a huge mistake I was making that was adding to the fact that I was feeling so overwhelmed, is that I was trying to manage all the context of everything that I'm supposed to do just in my head. And I think we're capable. I've read some studies and they like vary on how much you can handle, but basically about 7 things can live in your active memory at any given moment. So if you get more than 7 things going on, which like I obviously have more than 7 things going on, and you're trying to manage it in your memory, you are constantly sort of like dumping a task going into long-term memory. You have to kind of rebuild. Okay, well, I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to do this. And then you're like bringing those things forward, but you can't really hold it all in front of you and say, I can manage this, right? So you know that there's a lot to do. You're trying to juggle it, and you can, like I have. It's not like I was missing things, but it just feels way more stressful because it's a lot more mental effort to do it. And then every time when I sit down and write one of these lists, I'm immediately calmer because I look at it and I go, all right, you know what? This is a lot of stuff, but a lot of this stuff is fast, right? Like there's things that I need to do that are like one of these items is basically check in with somebody. So that's an email. I have to send that email and then that gets checked off. And then I have to like invite some people to an event, it's all like, okay, it's an email, it's a checklist, it's, write a doc. All of these things individually are between 5 and 30 minutes typically, which feels like an infinite amount of work when I'm trying to remember all 30, 40 things that are written down on this list here. But when I look at them in front of me written down, I kind of look at this and I go, okay, so most of this is just an email follow-up with, like, a lot of these are people that I'm in a sales cycle with. I just need to send a little nudge and be like, hey, did you get a chance to look at that proposal or whatever it is that we're doing in the process right now? And then a bunch of this other stuff is like, I've got some bigger things that I'm doing. Like I'm working on some stuff for the hackathons. I want to build a landing page and an experience where people can have badges and, all sorts of fun stuff like that. And then we're working on like some designs for the merch store. So I got to talk to the artists about that because I'm working with some cool artists, but they're all super busy. So you just got to kind of stay on the project and make sure that they have everything they need. Mind is for having ideas, not holding them. Ooh, I like that. That's a good one. It's a real good one. Let's see, where are we at? More than about 3 things on a to-do list for any given day. At most, one of them will get done. So here's the thing that's interesting about this for me. If I have a to-do list that's like programming stuff, 100% agree with you. But so many of my to-do items are like admin tasks. Send somebody a contract, prepare a contract, send a follow-up email, like email a few companies about whether they're interested in collaborating on something, talk to a conference organizer about dates, like little stuff like that. I'm talking to people about, I've got a script I need to review. I've got some devs I need to get lined up for Web Dev Challenge. I've got trivia questions for this upcoming game we're going to play at Cascadia JS and then at Web Unleashed. We're going to take, you remember the game show Hollywood Squares? We're going to make dev squares and the devs, like the speakers from the conference, are going to be my Hollywood Squares. And I've got like a project that needs to go to editing, and I've got some clips that I need to review for technical accuracy from a video, and it's all like none of these things are big. It's just stuff that you have to kind of sit down and like remember that you said you were going to do it, and remember what priority they are, because some of this stuff needs to be done today and some of this stuff can be done next week. And if I'm trying to juggle it in my head, I might work on the thing for next week because that's what I can remember. And then I'll realize tonight that I forgot to do the things due tomorrow. And now I'm like up until 11 because I didn't like prioritize properly. So that's a thing that I try not to stress myself out about too hard. And writing the list is good at that. The other thing that I've noticed is that I used to try to build out these kind of like personal management systems where I would get Notion, or I'd use GitHub, or I'd use whatever, whatever. What the hell are you? Get out of here. It's like a weird moth thing. There so you build out all these like software systems, and then because they're permanent, everything kind of rots in there, right? And I noticed this happened in every company I worked on too, where you'd sort of have the backlog or the icebox or whatever, where there's good ideas in there, but because they never get reviewed, there's no like cadence or process for making sure that you're looking at those things. They just sort of rot. And the thing that I've noticed about my lists on paper is that the act of sitting down with a cup of coffee and manually copying the items that I haven't finished yet over to the next page allows me to think about each thing that I'm doing. And so if I'm looking at this and one of the things is like, I don't know, build new feature for Code TV, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, is that really like, is that important? Like, is that a thing that needs to be done, or is that a thing that I'd like to do someday? And sometimes I pull it forward, and sometimes I think about it. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put that on my maybe list. And I have another list that's sort of like an icebox. And I know that I'll probably never look at it, but I write it down because it makes me feel better about taking it off the active list because it's not a thing I'm prioritizing. And that's my way of sort of really looking at this stuff and realizing I've done a lot of the things on this list and forgot to update it. But each of these things, right, it's like, these are the tasks that help us stay organized and confident that that we're doing the right things. But the trick is that you have to know what you're supposed to work on, and then you have to prioritize what you're working on, and you have to continually review those priorities. And if you're in a company that's got like a functioning product org or really good technical project managers, they'll do this for you. You'll have that, this is why we have so many meetings. You got a standing cadence of like, all right, what are you working on this week? What's up next? Like, that's the prioritization, that's organizing, making sure you're clear on what the next thing to do is. And when you've got, say, a sprint planning, where it's, every 2 to 3 weeks, you sit down and you look at the whole list and you say, which are the things that we actually need to work on? What's most important? Pull these into priority order, make sure that people are clear on who's taken what. To me, that's kind of like recopying the list. But if you don't have somebody to do that for you, it's really, really helpful as an exercise to do that for yourself. At least it is for me. I get a whole lot of value out of doing it for myself. Love the new desk setup. Is this new? How long have I had this? I think I've had this desk set up for maybe 6 months now. I don't know. We'll see. What have I found more difficult to maintain the daily consistency? My sort of solution. I mean, daily consistency is one of those things that is. Daily consistency is not really what I strive for, because I don't have any one thing that I want to do every day. And I don't think in the way that my current position is set up, I could really focus on one thing every day. So my goal is to try to be consistent at making progress on something, and continuously revisiting what it is that I need to make progress on, and trying not to leave things in like half completed or incomplete states. And I'm better at certain parts of that than other. Like, if you look at the Code TV repo right now, you'll see I've got a couple long-lived pull requests in there because I haven't had the chance to like really sit down and finish those things. And that's definitely something that I'm trying to figure out. I'm talking to somebody about maybe helping me do that. But then with like the production stuff, those have deadlines on them, so it's far easier for me to stay consistent because if I don't do it, somebody's gonna be mad, and then I'm not gonna get more business. So it's much easier for me at least, I'm a biggest fire gets put out first kind of person. And the trick that I've learned is be mindful of how many fires you can actually tend at a time and try to think about like how to sequence these things so that they never become big fires. Um, and like an example of that would be, if you're doing a big code project, instead of making the one to-do list like deliver code project, think about the steps along the way and make milestones and make targets for those, like kind of a work back schedule of if I want to deliver this on, October 1st, that means I've got a month. And for me to get there, I would need to have the final design. Well, let's see. If I want to deliver it, I'd want to be in like final testing the week before, which means I would need to have all of the final assets and markup and everything kind of ready the week before that so that I could spend the week wiring up data, which means that I would need final designs the week before that, which means we need to have the plan figured out by the end of this week. Right. So there's and that's honestly that schedule's too tight. But either way, like you would by thinking about it that way, then you're not saying like, well, by the end of this month, I have to have this project done. And then it's sort of ambiguous what's due. It's like, well, I need to have a plan ready for the designer in 4 days. And if I don't have that, then we can't continue and we're definitely going to miss this deadline. Whereas if that's not well defined, it can become a big fire, but nobody notices because deliver app is still in the future, even though all these things that are critical for completing the app haven't been done, right? And you'll notice it like when they say shit rolls downhill in waterfall, where you'll get a project assigned, and then the devs sort of get like everything gets pushed and deadlines get missed, and then the devs get it, and they're like, okay, well, we're also going to need extra time, and they're like, can't, conferences tomorrow, and right. So that's the way that I think about it is, if I've agreed that I'm going to say film something on Thursday this week, if I need to have props and I need to have actors and I need to have a location and I need to have all that stuff ready and I need time for the production designer and the wardrobe person and all these other people to be able to get ready, then those people need to have everything that they need 4 days in advance of the shoot, which means I need to have the location and the talent and everything locked down, not the day before the shoot, but a week before the shoot. And in order to do that, I need to have reached out to the talent scout and the location scout a week before that, right? So it starts to become this sequence of things where 2 weeks out, I'm on fire if I haven't sent the talent scout an email, despite the fact that we're still 2 weeks out from the shoot. And I could say, oh, that's 2 weeks away. I'm not going to stress about that right now. So trying to figure out how to make sure that my consistency is maintained by small tasks that build up to the complete thing. And remembering that, it takes time to build stuff. You can't just sit down and knock the whole thing out in one evening. Because if you could, then it wasn't a big enough project to really stress about in the first place. If it's only 6 hours of panicked work, then why were you stressing about it? Just sit down and knock it out. Yeah. So what's up, Vinny? How you doing? Do I use AI boilerplate for some of that stuff? No. And the reason I don't is because creating the documents is part of thinking for me. I'm not going to tell anybody how to live their lives, but here's what I've learned about me. If I don't do the act of making the document, of making the plan, then I'm not thinking about the plan that's being made. If I say, hey, AI, I have a production next week, can you make me a work back schedule? It'll do a pretty good job, but I'm not individually, because then I have to sit down, I have to review that, I have to think about it, I have to kind of like go through it. So basically I'm writing it on my own anyways. And what I found is that the act of writing it causes me to like think a little more deeply about why I'm putting something on the schedule. And I have templates. I know it's not like I'm building this stuff from scratch. I have so many spreadsheets. You would be horrified at the number of spreadsheets that I have. Uh, but each of those is basically empty, and it just, I know I need to make a work back schedule. Here's the delivery date. Okay, in order to get there, this project has, we're going to be filming stuff. We have animation stuff. We have production design, and each of those things that we're doing then has to be like done in sequence, and I can figure out what the blockers are, so the production designer can't do anything until we know what the location is. And then to get the location, I need to talk to the location scout, and then to talk to the location scout, I need to figure out which location scout I want to work with, each of those things, right? And so those are the types of things that if I just write down location locked, or chat gpt gives me a work back schedule that says location locked, I'm not really thinking about the fact that, in order to get the location locked, I also need to figure out who the location scout is, and I might not write that down. And if I don't write it down, then it becomes a bit of a panic, because now I'm the day before, I'm like, shit, location lock is tomorrow. I didn't think about this. I gotta let me text the 4 location scouts I know to find out who's got something right now. And so it's and like I've done that. Like on this one, I'm scrambling on talent. I've got one on Sunday. I'm scrambling on talent because I just like missed that part. Like not missed it like it was just like part of it got lost in the shuffle. I didn't write it down, and then I was like, oh my god, I haven't like actually sourced talent yet. So we're scrambling to get that done today so that we have time to get everybody ready for Sunday. Um, yeah, whole thing. Um, Concerning career, how did I get this far? Okay, so this is a good question. Or yeah, you rewrote it. So from being a beginner developer and getting this far, how long in years did it take? So I will give several caveats to my career, because my career is long and wandering because I didn't have a target, right? I have just been following what has been interesting to me since the very beginning. And I mean that from the very beginning. I started out wanting to be a musician. I learned to code because the band needed a website. When the band broke up, I realized that I'd learned enough about websites that maybe I could make some money doing that. And then I started learning how agencies worked, and that was kind of fun. So I started chasing that down, and then I started working as like a R&D contractor for hire for a company, and then that was fun for a while. And then I wanted to be on a team, so I went and worked at IBM. And then I realized I didn't want to be on a team that big, so I went and worked in startups. And then I kind of learned about DevRel, so I like teaching people, so I started doing that. And then when I was teaching people, I got to be a leader in teaching. And so then I was like coming up with strategy. So I started learning about video, and I really like doing the video. And so then I was like, what if I did the video full time? And now I'm here, right? So it wasn't like I set out to be what I am. It's very much been open a door, look around, see what's in there, see what the opportunities are, find the things that bring me the most fulfillment in my career, and then sort of like angle toward them. But with that context out of the way, I've been doing this for 22, almost 23 years now. I got my start in right out of high school. I think I built my first websites were built for my band, and that would have been around the time I was in high school, about 2003-ish. My first paid jobs were probably around 2006 or 2007. And I got into IBM in 2016, which is really where I would say my like tech career arc took off. Took off. My tech career took off in probably 2014, and I went from being like hired at IBM, which was my first tech job, to being the VP of developer experience at Netlify. I got that job in 2020, 2021, something like that. I can't remember. I joined Netlify in 2019, so that's 5 years after I moved over to IBM. I was a principal developer experience engineer when I took that job. And so, yeah, I spent like the first probably 10 years of my career, 7 to 10 years, um, very freelance, very hired gun, and I didn't have anybody to learn from. And so I got good at the parts of at the projects that I practiced, and I didn't have any experience as a manager. I didn't have any experience in the business side of things. I didn't know how to value things. And so my salary was really stagnant from 2006, 2007 when I think I started making maybe 30 grand a year. And pretty quickly after I went independent, which would have been 2007 or 8 is when I started doing freelance full time. I think I got to 60 grand. And then I stayed somewhere between 60 and 90 grand all the way up until like 2014. I didn't really ever figure out how to charge more. I didn't really figure out how to value my services or things that I could do differently to make a little more money. So it wasn't until I got my first six-figure job was in 2014. I got a year long, or I guess it was 2014 or 2015. I can't remember. I got a year long contract as an R&D engineer, and they paid me 10 grand a month. So that was my first six-figure job. And then when I went to IBM, that bumped up 15% or so. And then when I went into like startup land, Gatsby and Netlify and stuff, it went up further. But it was like 10 years to get to 100 grand, and then like another 2 to 3 maybe to double that. It was like I think I could have done things differently and made different like trajectory jumps had I been optimizing. But because I was just chasing what was interesting to me, money wasn't the point. I was trying to make sure that I like really enjoyed what I was working on. And then at a certain point, I realized that like part of being able to do the things that were fun was having the budget to do them. And so then I started getting more interested in like, how do you charge appropriately? How do you get bigger budgets, more access to resources to be able to do big, cool things. And then that was when I started focusing on it, and it made a big difference real fast. Work back schedule. Yes, yes, yes. What happened at Netlify? Nothing happened at Netlify. I think like companies grow and they change. And so Netlify, when it started, was really big on the Jamstack. It was very community oriented. At the time that I left, they were realizing that almost all of their revenue came through enterprise. And so and also the Jamstack had like the Jamstack was something that, when it first started, it was really revolutionary. And it was, people weren't doing it. Like everything was server hosted. You served your templates from a server, and that was just how things worked. And the Jamstack was this idea of like putting your front end as like a separate thing that just used APIs to call back to the back ends. By the time I left Netlify, that pattern was so universal that it didn't make sense to even talk about the Jamstack anymore, because it was just like, that's just how people build websites. Calling it the Jamstack is silly now. But then, when Netlify wound down the Jamstack community, they didn't have like a replacement community. And I was pushing more toward video production stuff. I really wanted Netlify I wanted to do what I'm doing at Code TV at Netlify. That was my plan. And I kept kind of writing up budget proposals and the things I wanted to do. And I was going to basically, Web Dev Challenge was going to be a Netlify show. That was the plan. But I couldn't get it across the line. And I realized if I wanted to do it, I was going to have to go independent. So for me, nothing happened. I left Netlify because I wanted to do something that just wasn't aligned with their goals. And I realized if I wanted to do the thing I wanted to do, I was going to have to figure out how to get there on my own. But yeah, I think Netlify right now is trying to pivot back more toward the developer community. It's still a good product. It's still what I use for hosting my sites. Don't know. Times are weird right now. Like everybody got kind of broken after the pandemic. All these companies started like laying people off to reassert dominance, and the investors got super weird. And I mean, we're seeing what's happening, and the leadership in Silicon Valley is getting real odd these days. But it seems like we're correcting a little bit. People are realizing that you can't just you can't be that terrible for that long and expect to not see the downsides in your numbers. So the spreadsheet people have done their damage. They will be replaced by not spreadsheet people who will do good things but be bad at making money. So they will eventually be replaced by spreadsheet people who will destroy everything fun in favor of making money, who will then destroy everything fun and get replaced in favor of fun people who will not be good at making money. The cycle continues. It's the circle of life, as Elton John would say. Um, I mean, so okay, the era of AI. My opinion on this has stayed pretty similar. I've been reluctant to dive headlong into AI because I haven't seen a lot of people showing up in AI companies that are actually solving a problem. They're showing everybody neat tricks. And when you start to say, okay, what problem is this solving? It's typically not a problem that people want solved. Um, so I've been pretty reluctant because of that. I haven't really seen anybody saying like, you know what I really want is I want, AI to replace everything fun and creative that humans do so that I can have more productivity in the office. Um, and then whenever you hear somebody who is making the promise like AI is going to do the boring stuff, so you've got all this free time, and then that person lays off half their staff and assigns the extra half of the work to the remaining people. And so, sure, maybe AI made them more productive, but they definitely just got doubled up on work and didn't get a raise. So, who profits from it, right? So I'm hesitant on a lot of the AI promise, and I do think that we're going to see a shrink in the AI industry because I just don't think a lot of these companies are actually thinking through like what value do you provide? They're just thinking how do we say AI enough times that we can raise our next round. Um, so there's going to be a contraction. I think there will be a big contraction. I have a hunch that here in some amount of time, who knows how much, we're going to see a significant shift away from the marketing being like now with AI to like value props again, because that seems to be the cycle is, we say like, everything is web 2.0. Okay, but why? And then we start saying, well, this app actually solves a really interesting problem. And the fact that it uses web 2.0 design is part of how we solve that problem, but that's not really the point. Similarly with crypto, everybody was like everything crypto, everything crypto. And we were like, but why? And then people were like, you know what, you're right. Blockchain doesn't really matter in the vast majority of use cases, but in the places where it's useful, like say verifiable credentials, hey, it's actually pretty damn useful. Maybe we should use it for that. But they don't talk about crypto. They talk about verifiable credentials because that's the actual value, right? Um, Similarly, I think we're going to see there were things that we were using AI for before AI was a buzzword, things like computer vision, machine learning, pattern recognition, stuff like that. Those sorts of things have been around for quite a while, and they've been very valuable for quite a while. And you could see where they were useful. Like if you ever use an expense report system and you upload a handwritten receipt and it accurately transcribes the amounts, like what you bought, where it's from, all the things that have to go into your expense reporting software. When that works, that's AI. Works really well. Super happy about it. I want that to stay. But like when it says like, hey, we're, like this is going to replace your project managers, I promise you it won't. Like it'll replace your project managers in the same way that Trello replaces your project managers. Like theoretically, if you develop all the skill sets of a project manager, then a tool will replace your project manager. But you're not going to do that, so it's not going to replace them, right? And so I think what we're going to see is that AI is going to settle into being a tool that gets used in the developer tool chest to solve useful problems. And there are a lot of cases where that's going to be true. So there's stuff that I'm excited about. There's like MCP is pretty interesting because you can define basically an API and go to the LLM and say, you are allowed to do exactly these things, use these tools to solve those problems. Hashbrown.dev is interesting, and MCP UI is interesting because they allow you to define sets of components and say, hey, LLMs, you're allowed to generate exactly this UI using components I wrote to generate that UI. So now you as the developer have to build a design system. You have to build the use cases. You have to think through how somebody's going to interact, but you don't necessarily need to build exactly the UI because you don't know if somebody's going to ask to see their data as a bar chart or a pie chart. And really, you don't care. And if you ever look at like most corporate dashboards, a lot of times they have these sort of configurability options so that people can do that, but you can't really predict every possible way that somebody would want to configure things. So being able to provide a base set of components and styles and say, hey, AI, let the user say, I want to see a bar chart and a table of users and whatever thing. And then it uses your components to generate that UI. You're still a developer. like you still have to build all that, right? You're just allowing the user to sort of configure in natural language in a way that would be extremely hard to do through configuration or by a developer trying to like guess every possible permutation, right? So what I see is that as we're learning, if we start to think of these tools as tools, the same way that learning Redux doesn't make you don't have to not learn state management if you learn Redux or Tanstack Query or what are the other ones? Justand. Um, all these tools make it so that you as a developer can be more effective at managing state, but it doesn't take the work away. And I think that AI is going to be very similar in that the tools that are promising to replace a developer are going to fall short in the same way that all of the tools that promise to replace developers with WYSIWYG editors are fell short. You know, people will do it until they hit the wall, and then they'll realize that they need to code to get past that wall. And if they don't want to learn to code, they're going to hire somebody who can. That's going to be us. So, you know, it'll get rid of certain types of work. I do think, like, I don't think there's going to be a big market for slicing up PSDs into HTML anymore. I don't know if that's been a market for a while, in fact. But like, sure, that's the stuff that AI is good at. Like if you ask it to write some for loops, it's probably going to do a good job of that. So if you're expecting that the job is like I have to be barely functional as a programmer and I can go get a six-figure job, those days I think are over. But I think if you are good at programming and you're interested in programming and you learn how AI works under the hood, not like really works, like you don't have to get down into what a neural network is or how to build one. But I think if you understand what the component parts that make AI are, you will be able to stay very gainfully employed as a developer. But I do think we're past the point where we can like ignore it and hope it goes away. I think we could get away with that with crypto. Because you know, if you ignored crypto, it just meant you weren't in the rooms where the crypto bros were selling other crypto bros crypto. AI right now is basically everywhere, and to ignore it is, I think, sort of like trying to ignore the printing press. You may disagree with a lot of things about it. It's going to enable a lot of bad things. It's also enabling a lot of good things, and it has. I mean, AI before it was a hypey buzzword, really was. It was in so much of our tech, and so we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. And I think if we stop looking at it as a miracle and stop pretending that it's going to become intelligent and start thinking about it as what it is, which is advanced pattern matching, then it becomes just like regex, a tool that can be really useful, but can also cause a big mess if not used correctly. And we start tastefully applying it to our projects, and we're going to become much better developers for it. So we're in an AI bubble. I would almost bet money that there will be a pretty catastrophic AI collapse. There's a lot of like economic indicators. I think it's like Berkshire Hathaway has this like hype indicator of this whether or not we're going to be in a bubble, and the AI hype indicator is like way higher than it was for both the mortgage collapse and for the dot-com burst. So probably this is pretty bad. There's also some really scary stuff about like I think it's 6 companies right now, spent more than the rest of the economy combined, um, over like the first quarter or something. Um, all these I'm citing these numbers from memory, and I think they're incorrect, but it was like, let me say it vaguely. A small number of companies spent an unbelievably high amount of money specifically on AI infrastructure, and that made up like a statistically significant amount of the GDP of the United States. So if those 6 companies stop spending money, we almost immediately are in a recession. So is the collapse coming? Almost certainly. Like they can't spend like hundreds of billions of dollars every quarter indefinitely. It just won't. There's no way we can do that. So yeah, there's going to be like a readjustment of all of this stuff, and I think when that happens, it hopefully won't be like the dot-com bubble burst, but it definitely might be. And if that's the case, then I think the people who are engaged in being good as developers and also understanding like the value and utility of AI as opposed to the hype and magic of I think they're going to be resilient. I think that there's still going to be a lot of jobs for us. Oh, nice. You took August as well. I'm happy to hear that. That's very cool. Um, a big market for fixing and improving vibe coded stuff. I think that's true. I'm already starting to see there was a thing that went viral on Blue Sky and probably on other sites that was there's a vibe coding cleanup specialist is like a job title that's starting to show up on LinkedIn. Um, what's on my tech radar? I was talking about hashbrown.dev. I think that's going to be I think that one will be pretty interesting. Um, other than that, I mean, I'm increasingly convinced that there's like no better way to build projects quickly than Convex. If you haven't tried it, it's real good. It's kind of like a database plus business logic plus real time, all kind of rolled into a very DX friendly package. Um, the team behind it is real sharp, and you know everybody that I know who's started using it just sort of naturally starts gravitating toward it as their weapon of choice for any kind of like proof of concept work or if they want to stand up something quickly. It's real good. Uh, yeah, I don't have a lot of stuff like ready, but I do think I mean, I'm not thinking of everything, but there's a lot of good stuff out there. Ingest, really good. I think it's a cool tool. Um, they do a lot of it's like workflow orchestration stuff. We're actually gonna on the 11th. We have Dan Farrelly, who's the CTO and co-founder of Ingest, is going to come on the show because a couple weeks back or a few weeks back now, I did a Tuesday stream where I was putting some ingest stuff together, and I tried to do the real time and hit some snags that I think were mostly just out of date docs. And so I emailed Dan and I was like, hey, I just sent him a link to the stream, and I was like, you know, if you ever want to come teach this stuff, it'd be super helpful to me personally, and I think people would enjoy it. And he immediately was like, hell yeah, let's do it. So we're gonna do an ingest session next week on Thursday. Um, yeah, good stuff, all sorts of good stuff. But yeah, convex rules. Script Kitty, feel like you know some coding nonetheless, have many gaps. What are good resources to learn general programming concepts? I mean, I would say the best thing you can do is just keep building and build with different stuff and get curious about how people are building things differently. So I, as much as I wish there was a way to just say like, hey, go read this and you'll be fixed. But the challenge I found is that a lot of academic stuff is written from the perspective of somebody who's done a lot of trial and error and kind of landed on something that works for them. And then they present that as if it is like objectively correct. But the challenge is it is often correct, but without the context, it becomes dogmatic. And so the thing that really made me well-rounded as an engineer is building things a lot of different ways and seeing why my projects fell over when I tried to do different things. So if I organize my code in a certain way and then I have a new idea and I realize that, oh my God, I'm going to have to tear this whole thing down and rebuild it to accommodate this feature because I tightly coupled these pieces. That's you're only going to make that mistake once, right? And so the building is such a critical part because it's the reps that make you good at this. It's sort of it's like if you've watched The Bear, you know, and they talk about there's that episode Forks where he goes and he like polishes silverware, and it's the repetition and the discipline and all that kind of stuff. Or if you watch Karate Kid and he paints the fence and it turns out that repetition was teaching him technique, right? Stuff like that is as frustrating as it is, the reps are the thing that make you good, and the continuing to learn and like looking at the way other people code, reverse engineering projects, so useful. Um, the building, and then if you can share it so that people can give you feedback, and then take that feedback with an open mind, because not everybody is good at delivering feedback, but even sometimes when somebody's an asshole, there's still good information in like why they're delivering that feedback. So separate the delivery from the message if you can, and remember that there's lots and lots of ways to solve problems, and everybody's going to have different ways to solve problems. Typically, your goal, in my opinion, should be to try all of those ways and then recognize which ones work for your brain, and that'll make you a little more well-rounded. It'll help for sure. Um, so let's see. Working in a startup, we're forced to use tool like Cursor. losing touch to programming, watching other stuff on X, and I don't care about code anymore. Okay, here's the thing. Like I use Cursor, but I don't let Cursor write my code. I use Cursor if I get an error that I would have to Google. I'll like start there and I'll say like, hey, what is this error? Like, can you fix this error? And then it sometimes works, and sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then I go to Google, and I try to find somebody who's written a blog post on it or whatever. Um, but generally speaking, like I'm trying to write my own code, and if I'm letting Cursor do a thing, it's usually because it's a thing I've done 1,000 times before, and it's like boring to write. Like if I need to write a take a JSON object and turn it into a Zod schema, just copy paste the damn JSON object and say make it the Zod schema out of this, and then go clean it up. There's stuff that like it doesn't make you better at programming to handwrite a JavaScript object for the 10,000th time. But if you let the code, if you let the thing take the wheel and you're not like reviewing the code, and like this is the reason I don't use Cursor a lot, is I don't like code review. Right? And if I wanted my job to be code review, I would have gone into engineering management. I don't want to do that. So I have steered away from that. And if I let the code editor write my code, my entire job becomes code review. And it's really important. You can't just ship what comes out of an LLM without thorough review, or you end up in trouble. And you know, there's been some stuff in the news lately about companies that did that and got themselves in a lot of trouble. And we're not going to name and shame, so don't get into the comments about that. But I think it's important to recognize that like the tools are there. We get to choose how to use them. And if, you know, like if you are being forced to use the tool to write the code for you, that sucks. I would maybe start hunting and see if there's another job that maybe wouldn't make you do that. But you know, if you're able to use the tool to help you like clean up TypeScript errors, or you have to write some loops, or you're pulling data out of an API and you want to make sure that you have good error validation, like whatever, let it do that. You've done that 1,000 times. You don't have to do it again. But I think it really is important to remember that like you're either writing the code or you're reviewing the code, and you don't get to not do one, because if you don't review, you are basically shipping who knows what into production, and no one will be able to maintain it because the LLM's not going to maintain that context window. So you don't know what it does. The LLM doesn't know what it does after you reset that context window, and none of your coworkers know what it does. So it might get a result that looks correct, but like you haven't checked edge cases, you haven't made sure that it's not like evaling unknown code. There's so many things that could be happening. And so if you don't want to be a code reviewer, be a code writer, and just, you know, use the tools for that. I have a comment that's too long for this chat window. Yeah, well, I mean, like Linus, I like a lot of things about what Linus has built, but I don't know that he's somebody I look up to as a role model or an oracle. Really, he's got one very cool thing. All the Vinnies should AI code review all of my work. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Stuck in your current global remote role, been trying to land a new one all year, but it's harder because of location disadvantages. Nigeria. You picked open source to stand out. Man, I wish I had good advice. I don't. It's so hard. Like the market's rough. Very unfairly, it's rough to be trying to get a job out of Nigeria. Be public, make connections, be active in communities, show people who you are. Like if you can be visible, unfortunately might require a lot of sweat equity on your part, but like there's a lot of companies that will accept guest articles. You can go write for CSS Tricks. You could try to write for, I think Alistapart is still doing it. You could try to write for Smashing Magazine. You could try to write for, you can publish stuff on dev.to. You know, putting out work that you've done, teaching people how things work, improving any of that visibility just makes it a little bit easier when you're asking for a job. People can go see your body of work and say like, hey, I can literally see that you can do this job, and I like the way that you write code. I like the way that you talk about code. Seems like you'd be a good fit. So it is unfortunate that it requires that kind of, extracurricular work. But I do think like that's my advice to everybody is if you're able, try to do that because it's, who knows you, who will recommend you behind closed doors. Those are such important things. And it's one of the only things that you can kind of directly influence is the more active you are in a community, the more you try to become a really like pillar in that community, an educator, mentor, whatever it is. Those or really just be a friend. Like if you're doing stuff, you're showing people what you build, that's signaling to them that you can do that thing so that when the job comes up for somebody who needs somebody that can do that thing, they will think of you. Um, I repeat this all the time, but your career is a pie eating contest where the prize for winning is more pie. And so whatever you put out into the world is what people are going to ask you to do. And if you are currently in a position where you don't have a large network, the things you put out into the community are what build your network. People will be attracted based on what you release. And if what you're releasing is a lot of educational stuff, coding tutorials, sharing what you're working on, like I learned this cool thing, here it is, that starts to attract the kind of people who pay attention to that stuff, who are doing hopefully similar things, builds out a community of people who are interested in the same things you are, and ultimately will eventually lead to opportunities and introductions. And I wish there was a shortcut, but if there is, I don't know it. Have you ever tried making IoT kind of stuff? Yes. We did a project called The Box. It was really fun where we had it was a physical box. It was 8x8, and you would do tasks on a mobile app that would give you, if you won, you would get a code. It was 6-digit code, and there was a number pad on the box that you would punch into, and that was a capacitive touch keypad, and that ran through a USB hub that went to a laptop inside the box where we would go check against Convex. Actually, we'd go check against Convex to see if the code was valid. And then we would randomly select a prize based on valid codes and what was remaining in inventory and send that back to the laptop screen, at which point somebody would pick the prize that was selected, place it into the box, and then press a button on the laptop, which sent a USB it was web MIDI, a web MIDI signal out of the laptop to the box, which triggered the electromagnetic lock to disengage. So the door would swing open and people would be able to claim their prize. It was super fun. I love doing stuff like that. I'm in contact or in early discussions with a couple of companies about different ways that we could bring in. Like I really want to do some interactive badges. I have this idea in my head of like a Captain Planet thing where everybody who goes to a conference gets a badge, and their badge is like a different thing. Like it could be straight up Captain Planet, Earth, Wind, Air, Fire, Heart, or it could be based on the conference. Like if it's, there's an AI track, there's a front end track, there's a DevOps track, et cetera. Each person gets like their track, or it randomly assigns their track. And then we could put around these NFC loot boxes, and the NFC loot boxes would basically be like, you need one of each type of badge to be tapped to this loot box at the same time in order to open it. And that could be hooked to a lot of, we could be doing a lot of things. It could be hooked to an app that like gives you a redemption code so that we don't have to like have somebody standing there to reload the loot boxes or you like open an empty loot box and all that kind of stuff. But there's so many fun things that we could do. I've been wanting to do there's this old kids game called Legends of the Hidden Temple where kids like they run through different rooms, and the different rooms have different like puzzles and challenges. I really want to do something like that with IoT, like pressure plates in the floor, or like hide like clues around, and you have to like execute a thing that like goes, you have to like write the piece of code that lets the API call show up in the right format so that the door unlocks so that you can get to the next room. Like so many cool things that we could do that would be IoT kind of connected stuff. Really just a matter of finding the right sponsors for it. Do I do this often? I tend to do this usually on an every Tuesday schedule. I took August off, so I haven't been around for a while. I also just rebranded. Oh, I forgot to talk about the rebranding. So I originally this was just sort of like it used to be that I would do Learn with Jason twice a week. So I would do pair programming with an expert twice a week on Tuesday and Thursday. Booking experts every week got hard. And I also just realized like I was going to burn out. But I had the slot. So I every once in a while when I had to Learn with Jason that didn't get booked, I would just go live and maybe I would work on something or maybe it was just like a chat. And I liked that. So then it sort of morphed somewhat organically into I do a session on Tuesday and then I do a Learn with Jason on Thursday. And the Tuesday session was just sort of a who knows what this is? Is it Learn with Jason? Is it something else? I don't know. So I've been thinking a lot about it, just packaging and improving things a little bit because these Tuesday chats I think are a good thing, but they didn't have a name. They didn't have a structure or even like sort of a clue of what they were about. So they just showed up as like Q&A. So this so I did some thinking. And because I go to the gym at 7 o'clock in the morning and it's 7 to 8, and then I have to get back from the gym, shower, eat something, hopefully, which like I didn't eat something today. So this is my breakfast that I didn't have time to eat. The I pushed it back to 9:30 because that gives me enough time to get out of the gym, shower, get a coffee, usually eat, and then get here in time to start. So now then I renamed it. I'm calling it office hours now so that it's clear that it's like open format time for whatever people want. These are going to run every Tuesday, 9:30 to noon Pacific. There will be exceptions, like I'm going into conference season. So every spring and fall, there's conference season in the US and it goes bonkers on my schedule. So like, for example, I'm going to be at All Things Open, Lead Dev New York, Web Unleashed in Toronto, GitHub Universe, and Beyond Tellerrand in Berlin, all over a span of like 4 weeks, I think. And then in addition to that, I've got some productions coming up. So in normal times, like when I'm not traveling, it'll be every Tuesday we'll do office hours. Every Thursday we'll do Learn with Jason. If I'm traveling, I will. I keep this schedule up in the Discord as well. So if you're in the Discord, I'll drop a link. Oh yeah, Cascadia. codetv.link/discord. So if you want to jump into the Discord, that is where I keep the schedule. So you'll see kind of what's coming up. It's also where we announce like the hackathons, where we announce new episodes of things. It's a good place to be. If you're not in there, you can selectively, like, we have a role for video alerts so that if you only want to know when we drop new content, you can subscribe to that role and get those video alerts. We don't have one for like go live stuff, but that's a good idea. We should do that. Yes, I'm also going to Cascadia JS. I'm going to be emceeing that. What's happening in Toronto is it's called Web Unleashed. It is, let me find a link. It's going to be fun. October 21st and 22nd. I'm going to be there. I think I'm giving a keynote, if I remember correctly. And I will be also running a stage game there. We're going to play that Dev Squares game, me and Will Johnson. So that'll be a good time. If you are in the Toronto area, make sure you hit me up. I will be at, Cascadia JS is a really good time if you are able. Where is it? Here we go. Cascadia 2025. Throw a link up for that. I guess I could share my screen while I'm pulling up all these conferences. Let me do that. So this is Cascadia. This one is Web Unleashed. This one's going to be a good time. And then I will be at Lead Dev New York. So yeah, whatever. So if you want to come hang out with me in New York, I'm going to be in New York on October 15th to 16th. And then I'm also going to be at All Things Open, the conference. Where is the actual conference? conference. In 2025, there it is. It takes me forever to find that. So I'm going to be at All Things Open 2025. That is in Raleigh, North Carolina. I will be there October 12th to 14th. So you can kind of see October 12th to 14th, October 15th to 16th, October 21st to 22nd. This one is in September. So that one's coming up soon. That's about 2 weeks away. And then I will also be at GitHub Universe, which is going to be in San Francisco. They're out at Fort Mason, which is a really cool venue. That one's going to be a good time as well. I'm talking to that team. I hope it works out. We've got a really cool project in early discussion. Still a lot that could happen before this gets greenlit, but yeah, we'll see. I think that's all the conferences I've agreed to. Oh no, Beyond Tellerrand, that's the other one. I'm not actually speaking at Beyond Tellerrand. I just really like it. So I am going to be there in Berlin, which is November 6th and 7th. If you are in Europe and you are able to make it, this conference rules. Like it's such a good creative conference. Because like people who speak here are in some cases like web folks. But like last year when I was there, I don't know if they've got the old thing up, but I saw Jan de Koster, he builds robots, like physical robots. And Jessica Hish was there, and she was talking about like her shop and her screen printing and her lettering. And a guy who I forget his name, but he illustrates children's books, and another guy who does like paint drip art on soccer balls exclusively at like World Cup. It's a very interesting niche job. And he just kind of talked about how he got into that. So it's these interesting people doing really interesting jobs that are the core of it seems to be creative people doing interesting stuff, which, as you may imagine, is very close to my heart. So yeah, I think these are all going to be good ones. If you're in any of these parts of the world and you can afford to go, come say hi. I'd love to hang out. But yeah, good times at conferences this year. But so to put a bow on that, because I think I was talking about my reorg. So Tuesdays now, 9:30 to noon Pacific is going to be office hours, and sometimes that'll be what we did today, which is open format Q&A. Sometimes that might be we're going to live code on something. I might have a project for Code TV, or if there's something that somebody really wants to see, like you could pitch me a thing that you want to see built, and maybe we'll just like work through it, right? Lots of opportunities there. I want to keep it open format. I want it to be a space where we kind of co-author what happens on a given Tuesday. So yeah, hit me with ideas, hit me in the Discord. That's an easy way to do it. Or if we want to do something more formal, we can always and maybe that's a thing we build is like a little idea drop, like a suggestion box kind of thing we could build. Then Thursdays, we're still going to do Learn with Jason, but I'm going to revisit the format of Learn with Jason a little bit for several reasons. I've been thinking about this. Right now, Learn with Jason happens live. I love the live aspect of Learn with Jason, but it gets put on YouTube as a live stream. And I don't know if this is true, but I have a superstition that the live streams don't get shared in the same way that video uploads get shared. I also think that on the replays, there's different value that people get out of the show. So I think live, Learn with Jason is a great way to hang out with people at synchronously, hang out with people, chat about new tech, learn something new, talk to an expert. You can ask questions directly. It's a way to connect and be part of the community. And I think that's really good. I don't want to lose that. So I'm not going to lose that. But I think when somebody watches Learn with Jason async, and please correct me if you watch it differently, I think that they're watching for one of two reasons. And I think that the show is actually at odds, where there's the first part, which is, 20-ish minutes of a kind of podcast So it's an interview style recording where we talk about what the tool is, what it's for, what purpose it serves, what the problem it solves, kind of the abstract of it, high level. What is this tool? Why would anybody care? How does it fit into your stack? Um, and I think that sometimes that's what people want. They want the experience, like they just want to keep aware of what's out there. What are the tools? How do they work? Where would they maybe fit in? They don't really have time to like dig in yet, and they don't have a project that would inspire them to dig in yet, but they want to be aware. And I think that is a very valuable thing. There's that like first 15 to 30 minutes it's basically a podcast. Then we switch over to pair programming. And in the pair programming, that is the value there, I think, is if you are evaluating a tool and you want to see what the experience is like to actually set it up, that's what Learn with Jason pair programming is. You watch me start from zero and set up a new project and then build some features with it. So you can get an idea of what the DX is like. I'm going to ask a bunch of beginner questions so that if you were wanting to see, like, how do you get spun up with a new thing, then this is a way to get that quickly. You get, for an hour, you can watch me set up with somebody who works at the company, asking the beginner questions, getting kind of like a best practices, how to get this thing scaffolded and up in your own project. I think that is extremely valuable for somebody who's in like the consideration phase of looking at it. If you're on the hook to choose a new stack for your team and you're looking at new tools, a Learn with Jason episode where you can watch me and somebody from the company set up the thing and kind of work on it. That's really useful because for an hour, you are able to get what you probably would have spent half a day or more getting on your own, and you don't have to go wait for somebody to be available in the Discord to ask some or to answer some of the like beginner questions, right? So I think there's three audiences for Learn with Jason. I think there's the live connection and discussion and community. I think there's the like high level staying aware of what's going on, what the new tools are. And then there's like this consideration evaluation, 0 to 1 sort of approach of what Learn with Jason pair programming is. So I'm going to actually split these into three things. And the way that that's going to work is that Learn with Jason on Thursdays is going to be a live event, same as it always was. The difference is going to be I'm going to do that first interview part as a podcast. So we'll actually like end it after the podcast and like I'll do a sign off and everything. Then we'll pause for a second to reset. And then we're going to come back like it's a new show for the pair programming. So the functional experience is exactly the same. We're going to start by discussing it, and then we're going to switch over to pair programming. We're going to build with it. So if you're watching live, very little changes in the way that Learn with Jason is done. However, the live streams are going to be set to probably members only on YouTube, which don't worry about that because we're going to release all the content. We're just going to take that first part. We're going to turn it into an actual podcast that's going to have a video and an audio only component because, again, it's just an interview. And so if you want to watch it on YouTube, you can. If you want to watch it on, if you want to listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, we're going to publish it through all the podcast platforms. So if you want to listen to it on your way to work, or if you want to, put it in your headphones while you're at the gym or something, that's going to be possible. And if your goal is to just sort of keep up with what's new in tech, these will be bite-sized episodes, probably 15 to 25 minutes on average, of just talking about a tool and how that tool works and how it fits into your stack. Then we're going to release the pair programming part as a like immediately into the meat and potatoes. You are going to start building with this tool, and that's going to retain the name Learn with Jason. That's what's going to be published on the YouTube, but it's going to be published as an upload. So we're actually going to do a little bit of edits, tops and tails, and then publish the pair programming as a show, as opposed to just keeping the live streams like we were before. So that's the plan. Let's see. What's up, Danny? How you doing? Yeah, thanks, Vinny. I think that's kind of what I'm after is I think part of the problem is I really want the people who come on Learn with Jason to get broader reach, right? And the shows that we like, Web Dev Challenge gets broad reach. So I know that YouTube will show content to people. I think the way that Learn with Jason is currently packaged, I think the live stream doesn't get as broad a reach. And I think because people watch it for two different reasons, we've got people who only watch the intro and bail, or people who skip all the way to the live coding part and don't watch the whole thing and bail. And I think the difference in signal there is somewhat high, because you end up with, like, if people only watch the first 10% and then drop off, the algorithm sees that as, oh, people didn't think the rest of this video was worth watching. We should suggest it to less people. Whereas they might have actually gotten exactly what they wanted. They listened to the podcast part. And then when we switch over to pair programming, like, I don't have time to do that. I got to go to work. So they turn it off, but they feel good. They feel like they got what they wanted. So I want to prove this, right? This is the experiment, is to prove whether or not I'm correct, that there are people who consume the interview part and people who consume the pair programming part. And I don't think that's the same audience. So by splitting those up, we're going to give it a chance for the podcasty side to be available to other people, to consume as, straight up passive. You can listen to it wherever you are. And then we're going to do the pair programming as like the video component that is exclusively through like Code TV and Learn with Jason. And if I'm correct, we should see that everybody gets a little more reach when they come on the show, which would make me very happy. My suspicion that YouTube doesn't promote live vids is correct. Yeah, I like, who knows, because YouTube is so weird, and they very realistically, I think, don't share any details about how the algorithm works, because people would immediately game them. So I get it. It's very mysterious. And, I think the people will give an argument of like, well, if you just made good content, people would watch it. And I think that's true, right? But I think part of making good content is making it really, really clear what somebody's opting into, which is why when you hear YouTube advice, people say, like, make sure your title and thumbnail is good. What they're actually saying is, if somebody clicks on this video, they should be very sure that they're about to get what they want. And I think that is what's not currently happening with Learn with Jason, is we're not making it clear what this is and who it's for. So I think by splitting it up into the two audiences, if you want to keep aware of what's going on in tech, but you don't have a lot of time, podcast. If you want to see this tool in action, video, like the pair programming. Second channel for live VODs could also work. Yeah, that's true. I talked to, so an interesting thing that happened is I got, I cleared 100K subscribers on YouTube, and that means that there's now somebody who works at YouTube that I have like regular calls with. And so I asked, I was like, hey, so I have, Web Dev Challenge, I have Leet Heat, I have Learn with Jason. Should I start new channels and have like a Web Dev Challenge YouTube channel and a Leet Heat YouTube channel to not confuse the audience? And what she told me, and she's like, unless your stuff is completely unrelated, like you were uploading cooking videos and also coding videos, then it doesn't make sense to split the channel, because it's not going to really affect the way that YouTube pulls, because it does kind of go on an audience or a video by video basis in terms of what people engage with, which I think is the right way to do it. I think that YouTube, looking at each video individually, the trick is that if your subscribers feel like the content's not relevant to them, and I could maybe make an argument that like somebody who likes Web Dev Challenge might not like Leet Heat, and vice versa, because they're very different types of content. Like Leet Heat is a game show. It's more comedy. Web Dev Challenge is more hands-on. It's more, Great British Bake Off. You might not watch Jeopardy, but you might love the Bake Off, and vice versa. And putting them on the same channel might be a little bit of somebody would look at it and go, well, I don't want that one. And that could potentially be hurting my algorithmic views. But I'm not convinced that the amount of labor required to split the channels is ultimately worth it. I think that it would be enough of an administrative headache that it doesn't justify what could be an incremental gain. But yeah. Yeah, I know, Vinny. I know. This is why some top tech YouTubers make videos of the live stream into a shorter video, take the VOD, turn it into a short, condensed, and focused video. Yeah, that is very true. I think this is like, Theo is extremely good at this. He pulls, does a live stream for multiple hours and then pulls out like 15 to 25-minute videos that are edited versions of whatever he was talking about on the stream. They do really well. He's very good at the packaging. He's very good at like the YouTube thumbnails and titles and stuff. And that is, that's something I could probably get better at. It's also something that's like, when you like, you have to do something, and like the thought of doing it just makes you want to cry. I am, like, so uninterested in playing the YouTube thumbnail game, and I don't think I will. Like, I still think my thumbnails will continue to suck, and I'm okay with that. Like, honestly, I'm totally okay with that because I think that, I don't want I don't really want casual, flyby viewers. Like, I don't like the drive-by comments when people don't like, I like it when somebody new shows up. I don't like it when somebody, like, flies into the comments and, like, casts some weird judgment on the things that we're working on or, like, about somebody who's on the show and clearly has never, like, seen any of it and, like, will never come back and is just there to be, like, mean. And I think that a little bit of the algorithmic thing is if you get there's man, I must have a window cracked. There's a fly like, flies in here today. Um, if you if you escape containment, right? That's kind of the joke is you've got your circle of people who see your things, and then there's like their circle, and then there's like that. If you go beyond, you've escaped containment. And sometimes that's really fun. Like we've got episode 1 of season 2 of Web Dev Challenge has fully escaped containment. It is still getting thousands of views a day, months later, and you know it's the highest watched video on the channel. It's like just really popular. And that's great. And the comments are almost unanimously positive. But I kind of feel like that if you look at that thumbnail, I can show you this thumbnail. And this is part of this is just like I don't really understand how any of this stuff works. But season 2, episode 1. This is my thumbnail if it loads. Come on, little buddy. So my thumbnail is, I would say I like it because I think it shows what's happening. Here are people working on computers. You can see that it's code, and it says that it's the Web Dev Challenge. But it doesn't have like the wow text. It doesn't have the arrows. It doesn't have the shocked faces or things like that. And I think I could get a lot better at that. And I would say that like Leet Heat is an example where I really do need to learn because I don't think people know what Leet Heat is unless they start watching it, and nobody has any incentive to start watching it. Web Dev Challenge, I think, is a little more clear. It's Web Dev Challenge. It's pretty easy to understand what that is. When you see the thumbnail, here are people working on computers. This is real people working on computers in a Web Dev Challenge. I get it. So I think this one does pretty well. This one also has a higher click-through rate, but it's still not like a really high click-through rate. I see people post like 10% click-through rates. I've never had a 10% click-through rate. I don't even know what that would feel like. What must that be like to have 1 in 10 people want to click on your video? Like if I get 5%, I'm over the moon. I feel like a 5% or better click-through rate is like, whew, what a great day. But yeah, so anyways, these are my bad thumbnails. Which are really honestly, these thumbnails are I have a photographer whenever we do Web Dev Challenge. I go through the photos, I find one that I like, and then I put this Web Dev Challenge logo on it, and that's my thumbnail. Like I'm not gaming this, right? I'm not trying to find the right template. I will test like 3 photos. And if one of them like drastically overperforms, I might test like 3 more to see if there are any that are like similarly performing to that one. But generally speaking, like it is what it is. I'm doing this. I hope people like it. I'm not gonna like become a YouTube person to try to make this work. Because I also think that part of what works for me is that I'm not obsessing about the numbers. And I think if I go to YouTube optimization mode, it'll force me to start obsessing about the numbers a little bit. And I think that would make me enjoy this less. So part of it is also just trying to be careful. But yeah. He like fully takes it down. Okay, yeah, maybe. I mean, that would work because we are going to put all of the content except for the transitional stuff where I'm like, okay, now we're going to switch over to here, which nobody cares about. And you'd be able to watch live. So that's maybe I will take it down. That's not a bad idea. What's up, Preston? How you doing? All kids back in school. All right. Good. You like the overviews, not ready for the web dev per program. Okay, so that's actually perfect because that's what I suspected, and that makes me more confident that I'm, it's a n equals 1, but that's good feedback. It makes me cry, great opportunity to outsource. Yeah, the thing about outsourcing is that the upfront expense of outsourcing is so high, and I feel like in order to outsource, you need to be really clear on what you're doing. Um, I have successfully outsourced a lot of things because I've been able to get them to the point where they're a checklist, and I have a really clear idea of, like, what I want. I don't have a clear idea of what I want with thumbnails, and if I tried to outsource it, it would end up being a project that I'm actively on because I have to, like, really manage what's coming in because I don't know what's right, and it's gonna very much be one of those annoying projects where I'm the client that's like, "I'm not sure what I want, but I'll know it when I see it." I hated that client when I ran an agency, and I know I would be that client if I tried to outsource thumbnails because 'cause I'm just not ready. I don't have a clear vision. Um, so my rule for myself with outsourcing is when I do a thing enough times that it's no longer varying when I do it, it's time to outsource. And so for example, the way that I book Learn with Jason has not changed in 4 years. We have a form that lets an expert pick a date. That form sends an email. That email has like their name and their uh, profile photo and what we want to talk about and all that kind of stuff. And then that all goes into a list. I write a title and description for the episode because so far I'm 100% sure I could find somebody who could do a good job with that. I just haven't had time to do it. Um, but I write the title and description, and then you create the event in Discord. You create the StreamYard thing that creates the LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and whatever the other one is, streams, Twitch streams. Um, the thumbnails are like a template in Figma, so you just drop in the different pieces. It's all a template, and as a result, I've been able to outsource it. And Aiden, who's in the Discord, is he just handles that, right? Similarly, like I work with editors on Web Dev Challenge on just about everything now, and each of them has like there's a clear template. This is, we know what it's going to be, we know how it's going to be published, we know what the format is, and as a result, I was able to outsource because the expectations, the asset that is being returned is extremely clear. We know exactly what it is. We know the parts where I need to touch it, and we know the parts where I don't. And so the editors send me like 20 minutes of like, this is the footage you need to review, everything else they've got. And we've got a well-oiled machine now. We're able to turn stuff around really quickly. But on the stuff, like I'm trying to put a merch store together right now. And that is like, I have a lot of opinions, but I don't have I'm not super clear on it. So I'm like kind of sending ideas. I'm sure the team I'm working with on this merch store is ready to rip my head off because I don't have time to like fully focus on it. So I'll get into a mood and I'll send them like 25 ideas. And then, they do what they can with the ideas I've sent. And then I'm like, okay, now that I've thought about it, I actually don't want these things. I want these things instead. I'm a pain because I'm not clear. So that's been a good reminder for me, and like a just generally remembering that like outsourcing sounds great until you realize that in order to outsource, you have to be crystal clear on what you're outsourcing, or else you're taking on a very hands-on management role, which is just as much time as doing the damn thing. Dude, I would love to come to Commit Your Code. I heard such good things about it. I really, really love I love that. Yeah, orchestration of autonomously capable individuals is a very good way to phrase that. But that really is the thing. If I'm not clear on what I want, then I'm not ready to have somebody else do it because I will micromanage you if I'm still thinking through the problem. I can listen to a conversation while I work, but if I watch pair programming while I try to code, it's like, yeah, oh, that's true. That's true. That's actually a very good point. One show I kind of miss, Kobayashi Maru. What did he do? Was that like Colby took on some kind of coding challenge on his own, or like what was the one person sweating it out for 30 minutes having to explain a product? Having to explain a product that like he'd never used before. This is interesting. I like this. Yeah, there's some like there's so many fun formats out there. I feel like if I'm not gonna take venture funding because I don't want to ever have to hyperscale Code TV, and I don't think it'll ever be a billion-dollar company. Um, so funding wouldn't make sense, but, like, if I just had, like, $10 million and I could just bring on the right people and, like, start the production, there's so many good ideas and so many capable people that if we just give them a chance, they'll create such incredible stuff. Um, and, once the ball gets rolling, you can hit critical mass. I think it's like Dropout TV. Like, now that they have 25 shows and 15 different people hosting different things, that compound audience, they're sustainable. Like, they make good money. They have their viewer supported. I don't think they do a lot of like sponsorship or like product sponsorship, or if any. I can't remember if they've done any, but like you have to get to that point. And I don't know if Sam Reich had a bunch of money up front or if he had an investor or how he did it. But like the gap between where you are and where you would need to be fully autonomous is a really, really tough gap to cross when you're bootstrapped, because you basically have to be able to make more money without more people to create enough space to get that extra person in. And I'm still trying to navigate it. We'll get there. 2026, I'm going to hire. I will have an operations job in 2026. I'm putting it out there. It's in the world. Okay. What are we talking about? Are we talking about anything? I'll tell you what. I'm gonna take a quick 2-minute bio break, and then I will be right back. If anybody's got questions, throw them into the chat, and we will keep rolling. And if nobody's got questions, I honestly might take a quick break because I got a lunch at noon, or I got not a lunch. I have a meeting at noon, so I would be able to eat something if I end early. So yeah, I'll be back in 2. Oh boy. Um, okay, I need to go watch these Kobayashi Maru. I think that's really funny. Um, taking small breaks while coding, web dev challenge, have to pause it until later in the day. And that's great. I'm glad that it's engaging enough to be distracting. um, very very funny, Vinny. Uh, devs enjoy live streaming their work. Clients enjoy updates about their work. Very very true. Um, each dev is live streaming their own work. Client could jump in the stream to ask questions or get feedback. That's one of the weirdest jobs I ever had. I was just getting my agency off the ground, And there was a guy who sold, I don't even remember what he sold. It was something very like industrial. Like I think he sold like machines that made machine parts, like CNC. So I don't even know what it was. It was some kind of specialized equipment. But he wanted a website. And so he called me and he's like, "Yeah, I want you to build me a website." And I said, "Okay." Um, talked about budget, talked about, goals and all this kind of stuff. And then once we'd had that all agreed out, he goes, "Okay, great. What time do you want to meet?" I was like, "Meet? What do you mean meet?" And he's like, "Yeah, let's meet at this coffee shop at this time." Um, and so, I was like, "Oh, I guess he just kind of wants to go over the details in person." And when I got there, he just looked at me and waited for me to pull my laptop out. "Oh, we're doing this. Oh, okay, let's do this." And so I built his website in front of him over the course of several days in this coffee shop. It was the weirdest thing I've ever done because he would sit there very patiently and then he would like give me feedback on the design in real time. I would never do it again because I feel like it was this short of like having to turn in a time card as a freelancer. Like I didn't like that because it also like when sometimes you just need to like sit and think about a problem. Like I did not get that option here. It was like okay, we're not thinking, we're just building. And fortunately it was a very simple kind of static website, so it wasn't like I needed to do anything particularly hard or gnarly. But man, what a weird job that was. What's on the menu for the Web Dev Challenge dinner today? We are doing a barbecue, so we're going to do burgers, fries, and hot dogs. I'm going to after my meetings, I'm going to run over to a local butcher, Laurelhurst Market here in town. I'm going to get some burgers. I'm going to get they make like franks in house, so I'm going to get some of those franks. I got to go get buns and all that good stuff. And then Joel Hooks, who is making a return appearance on the Web Dev Challenge, is going to he's actually done the first two cooks on triple cooked French fries. So he is bringing 6.5 pounds of French fries for 10 people, 9 people, 10 people, something like that. Real burgers or smash burgers? First of all, how dare you? And second of all, we're not doing smash burgers. I'm cooking on the charcoal grill tonight. Um, should it sound like an nightmare? Should charge extra? Yeah, if I would have known that's what I was getting into, I would have changed my rates for sure. um, yeah, manager of live streams, remote devs. Yeah. Maybe give the client a 1 hour window where they're allowed to ask you questions in real time. So here's something that I actually really do like. I love the like a collaborative session. So I really like work through sort of like, okay, give me your requirements, give me the sort of expected outcomes. I'm gonna go kind of mock this up a little bit, and then I'm gonna bring back, one or two wireframe options or something like that. And then I want to sit and I want to talk about this for a minute. Let's look at what we have. Let's see, okay, how would somebody use it like this? How would somebody use it like this? Or what are some use cases we're not thinking about? And then we've done like when I was at IBM, one of the coolest workshops I went to, we had a feature that we wanted to build. And so we came in, we talked about how the feature should work, like what it needed to be. And then everybody, stakeholders, devs, designers, everybody drew wireframes. And they were really, really lo-fi wireframes. Like you do a box with an X in it for an image and you draw some lines for text. And um, but we were all trying to think about like, okay, if this page needs to do these things, how do we organize this information on the page so that people can do those tasks? And everybody did some wireframes and we put them up on the board and we talked about why we were doing it, what the value was, all these sorts of things. And then we would without even saying like we like this one the best, we'd say, okay, now that everybody's seen everything, let's take another 5 minutes and let's draw a new wireframe based on like take all the ideas that you got, sort of combine them together. And within 3 rounds, we had basically converged on a design where we all agreed that this was the way to make this thing work. And now part of that is because humans are all very good at sort of like like collective delusion. So we'll talk each other into a thing and like we reach consensus because we like consensus. But at the same time, we also filtered out a lot of ideas that would have been a fight, I think, because somebody was like drawing this thing that was cool. And then as we talked, they kind of realized in the discussion that, I don't think that cool thing is going to solve this problem. And so in their next round, they dropped the cool thing. They voluntarily dropped it. We didn't have to have the fight. It was really fascinating to kind of watch how people started to understand where each other was coming from, and the wireframe started to not like they didn't all look the same, but we started to see these interesting commonalities between all of them. And then when we got to I think it was the third round, we decided, okay, let's take a vote on like which one we think is probably the best path forward for like a V1. And then everybody got to vote, and the stakeholders had 3 votes, I think. So like basically the stakeholders could, if they all agreed, they would weight the vote and that would win. But everybody else also was voting. So if the stakeholders weren't aligned, then it was kind of a majority rule. It was a really cool workshop. And we ended up, I think we short circuited probably 2 months of back and forth on like design and layout by having everybody in the room at the same time and like actually thinking through this together. It was a 2-hour workshop. Unbelievable. Like I would do it again in a heartbeat. It was such a good idea. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for watching. Lo-fi wireframes are key. Yeah, if you make it hi-fi, that's definitely a big problem. I've had more than one occasion where I showed somebody something that it's very clearly everything on it's like for placement only, placeholder, and they're like, why'd you use this image? And I'm like, I didn't. Like this is not nope, this is an image of a cat. There's no reason that we would have a cat on your website unless you choose to put a cat on your website. But it's so the little X's and the things that you cannot mistake, like hand drawn is always best, because you can't mistake a hand drawn thing for like, well, this is what the website's going to look like. No, man, I'm not going to draw squiggly lines on your website. Any thought on Laravel PHP or the Vue Nuxt roll the things? Laravel is dope. We've had Josh Seary, we've had Aaron Francis, we've had Joe Tannenbaum on Web Dev Challenge at different times. All 3 of them, if I remember correctly. Well, maybe Joe didn't use Laravel now that I think about it, but Aaron and Josh definitely did, and they were able to build a lot. Like their velocity out of the gate was unbelievable, and the number of features that they were just sort of able to turn on as opposed to having to build was like Laravel is great. If you're a PHP dev, I think Laravel is an awesome tool. If you are a dev trying to figure out how to build web apps really quickly and you don't have a preference on language, maybe give Laravel a little exploration. It's been around a long time. It's very mature. The community is huge and super active. There's meetups all around the world. I like Laravel. I'm a fan. Nuxt and Vue, I love so many people in the Vue community. Nuxt is great. Daniel Rowe is a good friend. Yeah, I have no complaints about it. I think the biggest thing with like JavaScript stuff is I don't have a lot of loyalty to like any given framework. I wrote React for a long time because that's what IBM used, and so we were a React shop, so I wrote React. Gatsby was a React framework, so I wrote React. And Netlify, we built a site in Nuxt, we built sites in Next, we built sites in Svelte, we built sites in Astro when it came out. 11D, like I think in general, each of these frameworks has different strengths and weaknesses, and generally speaking, they're all pretty baseline equivalent these days. With there's trade-offs. Like you make trade-offs. If you go with Next, there are trade-offs that you have to make because Next is super opinionated and does a lot, and it kind of expects you to do all those things, or else it's going to be really hard to work around them, right? And if you use Nuxt, Nuxt has like magic imports, which I personally really don't like. And there's some idiosyncrasies there. If you use Astro, it's got, there's the trade-offs of like it's not just a single page app by default, and it's not like easy to just turn on global state. You got to do a little work for that. So there's always trade-offs. There's things that you kind of have to consider in each case. And so it's thinking through the project and what you're trying to solve, and then assessing the requirements of the project against the capabilities of the frameworks to make sure that you're not going to be fighting the framework. Like personally, if you gave me a website that had a lot of like animation and stateful interaction on it, I'm honestly probably not like reaching for React these days. It's just too hard. Like stepping outside of the React loop is a pain. And if everything you're doing ends up in a use effect or you're like passing a ref for everything, just use the damn DOM. Like that's all you're doing anyways. You're just kind of, it's DOM with extra steps when you get to that point. Whereas something like Svelte, very much an animation first framework. That's one of their things. It's like targeted toward that. So if that's what you've been asked to do, defaulting to React might be because you know React better than other languages. That's been the case for me. But as soon as you get into it and you start doing it, you realize you're not actually writing React. You're just keep adding escape hatches to your React code so you can do the thing that you were asked to do, which kind of sucks. Like skip React altogether at that point and instead do like put it in Astro, put it in Svelte, do something where you can get straight to the DOM really easily and you're not worrying about the render like blowing away your state every time that anything changes anywhere in the app without a bunch of use memo or use effect or ref or all these other things. Yeah, like it's definitely all of these, but that's the thing. All of these tools are extremely good. JavaScript has sort of converged on a set of behaviors, and honestly, under the hood, a lot of them are using the same core pieces. They're using stuff like Vite or ESBuild, or they're using signals, or they're using, you know what I mean? Like we've sort of started to converge on a set of standard behaviors that we agree are useful, and that they're and so now it's more of like the ergonomics of how you use them. And for React, if you're building a single page app and you want like this component based architecture and you're putting together all these different pieces, like React with hooks and the state management, it's so good. There's so many good options for this. You throw TanStack query on there and you got all this amazing stuff. You throw convex in there, now you got real time in a database. Like it's cool. It's really cool how much you can do with React. If you are working against what React is built for, then it's really hard to work with React. So, but like you can do all that same stuff that I was just talking about in Svelte, in Vue, in Angular, in Solid, in like these are all good frameworks now. Like you've got the library side of it. If you want to get, like if React is the library, Next is the framework. In Svelte, you've got the library, and then SvelteKit, the framework. They all kind of have their. You can run it vanilla. They usually say don't bother, use the framework instead, because then you get stuff like routing and like server side rendering and things that you're going to eventually need in almost every app. Just kind of come baked in, and that's nice. Also, just roll Vite on its own. So good. It's so good. Like there's a million ways to build apps. They're all good. You just got to look at your requirements and do whatever you can to not get dogmatic about your frameworks, because they're ephemeral. They will change. They will disappoint you. They will get harder to use in ways that you may not want to deal with. And if your identity is I'm a React developer, it gets really hard to walk away from React because it feels like throwing away a part of yourself. If your identity is I build good stuff based on the requirements, then the tools are just tools. You can set one toolbox aside and pick up the other toolbox and not feel like you've traded your identity. Yeah. Have had a chance to use server islands? Yes, sir. I use server islands on Code TV, for example. If you look at the way the login component works, or the way that the protected video works, if you like on probably this weekend, there'll be a members only video because we're going to release the next episode of Web Dev Challenge to Code TV supporters early. So if you are a supporter, hey, did you know you can become a supporter of Code TV for as little as $5 a month and get early access to new episodes of content, as well as special badges and privileges in the Discord? And I'm cooking up some ways to send rewards to people who are subscribers at like certain milestones. So you can do that. It's $5 a month. It's really nice. You get early access and you get to see how a lot of the site works. Anyways, the the members only videos are set up in such a way that you load the shell and then a server component checks if you are a member with access, at which point it'll either load a you need to become a member to watch this, or it becomes available on whatever day. Or if you are a member, it'll show you the video and it loads it in from Mux and does all the stuff. So yeah, server components are dope. I love them. They're fabulous. I only like the auto importing in Nux to keep my code to be just the logic. So I agree with that. I do like that, but here's my thing about it. I don't know, when I look at a Nux project, what is coming out of Nuxt versus what is coming out of source code versus what is coming out of the standard library versus what is coming out of some dependency that I'm not aware of. And as a result, it takes a lot of work to trace behaviors. And that's mental overhead that I think far outweighs not having imports at the top of the file. Because an import tells me instantly, okay, the component that I'm using came from the components folder, or the component that I'm using came from this external package, or the component that I'm using is a built-in in Nuxt. That type of quick differentiation is so important to me because it allows me to navigate a project. And when you take away the imports, you've taken away all the navigational markers. And so now you either have to know, which eventually you'll build up the muscle memory of where things come from and how your project is built. And that's fine. I'm not saying it's not a useful thing, but it's the same reason that I don't use aliases in Webpack and Vite. I want to see where things came from. Like if there's a components folder, I want to know where it is. I want to be able to click that and jump into that folder. And so for me, at least, it feels like getting rid of your navigation on a website. Like, sure, I can Command K and find stuff, but that's not how I want to code. I want to be able to just glance at the imports and say, oh, we got a lot of third-party stuff in here. This one needs, I should be paying attention to that because I can't change these components. I got to make it work in here, kind of stuff. Conflicting APIs is a pain in the ass, yeah, for sure. Front matter and Nux for imports instead of putting them in the script. Fair. Yeah, very fair. I mean, that is one of the things I like about Astro is that you've kind of got like your front matter is sort of like the server, and then you've got your component is the what renders on the client, with obviously caveats now that they've added the server components and the client only and the so on and so forth. But it's like logical separations are nice. All right, Joe. I think I'm going to end a little bit early today because I do really want to eat something and I have a meeting starting in 20 minutes. So, okay, we don't have a stream this Thursday. We were unable to. This is on me. I have a lot going on this week. I have Web Dev Challenge tomorrow, and then I have another production on Thursday, Friday, and then I have another production on Sunday. And getting all. I just wasn't able to get a guest. So apologies for that. We have Dan Fairley. We're going to do some ingest stuff next Thursday. I'll be back on Tuesday. And then I will have, I'm going to be in Cascadia the Thursday after that. I'll be in Japan the Thursday after that. And the Thursday following that, we're going to do 2 weeks in Japan. I'm super excited about that. But I will be back on October 9th. We'll be, unless I book another Web Dev Challenge. I got a few more in the hopper. It's conference season, y'all. It's going to be busy. Anyways, love y'all. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next Tuesday. Bye.